Hello and welcome to the presentation Nationalism in India, Part 1. The making of nationalist movement. What is nationalism exactly? We studied in Chapter 1 how different nations of the world struggled to make their nations free and liberate themselves from the autocratic rule of the monarchs, get rights for themselves, have liberty. Nationalism simply refers to the one single sense where people belonging to different ethnicities, castes, cultures, religions, etc., they all come together with one single spirit, the spirit of my nation, one my country, one single sense of sacrifice, offering ourselves for the sake of nation, the spirit of national consciousness. Many political associations started in India exactly from the first war of Indian independence, 1857 onwards. Many political movements started, but the spirit of these political movements became intense only from 1870 onwards. Some of the important associations: Pune Sarvajanik Sabha, Indian Association, Bombay Presidency, Madras Presidency, etc. So, the British have promised, having come here as traders in the year 1600, and then slowly from trade to territory, they have captured our country and they started ruling our nation. And the period of World War One, we know in ninth class we have studied the cause of the World War One, the world being divided into two powers, the Axis powers and the Allied powers, and British, which was on the Allied powers and which was already colonized. India was already colonized by the British. The British told that if India is participating on the British side, then we will get the independence. The First World War, the Khilafat and the non-cooperation in the years 1919, we see the nationalist movement becoming intense. So it is the World War One which is very responsible for creating lot of impact on the economic front, also on the political situation. Number one, they have introduced a huge expenditure in the defense, and then they have introduced income tax. The customs duty was imposed. They also made forced recruitment or conscription into the military. During the same period of the war, the prices rise up, and the people could not make their basic amenities fulfilled. The rise in the price was difficult. There was agricultural commodities shortage. There was a failure of crop failure and shortage of agricultural commodities. All these led to the downfall of the belief in the British policies, and people were now getting fed up with this autocratic rule and wanted to liberate themselves. Then in 1918 and 19, and also in the period from 20 to 21, there was a crop failure that led to shortages. During the same period, there was also crisis throughout the world. There also spread one epidemic which caused diseases and also death. The death toll of the people increased. This led to poverty and misery in the country. The same period was accompanied by the return of Mahatma Gandhi, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, returning from South Africa. Already he had achieved lot of success in creating the sense of non-violence and satyagraha in different parts of the world. His political guru Gopal Krishna Gokhale, and he has determined that now it is a time to serve his motherland. On arriving at the Indian uh, motherland, his soil, when he has stepped into, he faced many challenges. In the words of Mahatma, I offer you peace, I offer you love, I offer you friendship, I see your beauty. I hear your need, I feel your feelings. My wisdom flows from the highest source. I salute that source in you. Let's work together for unity and peace. A man who understood the dignity of labor and created this sense in his own family also, where people respected him for his ideological expectations. His two weapons, satyagraha and non-violence, that was accepted by so many people. After arriving in India, Mahatma Gandhi's success in different parts of the world, that is South Africa, and his name and fame in different parts of the world, that has created great respect and aspirations in the minds of the people. They looked at Mahatma as a savior. In 1916, he traveled to Champaran in Bihar. We have studied about the indigo cultivation and the imposition on the farmers, the peasants of Champaran, who were compelled to cultivate this crop coloring substance, and this oppressive system on these people they could not tolerate. They were compelled, they were bound by the contract which they have signed. Now they want to liberate themselves, they want to cultivate the food crops. There they expected that this leader Mahatma is going to save them. He organized a satyagraha to support the peasants of the Keda in the district of Gujarat, where they were affected by crop failure and also a plague, the epidemic that involved so many peasants and their lives. The peasants of Kerala could not pay the revenue, the tax which was imposed on them, and were demanding that the revenue collection be relaxed. Some percentage has to be reduced, and he has led that movement also. In 1918, Mahatma Gandhi went to Ahmedabad to save the mill workers. So, like this, phase by phase, the achievements of Gandhiji were creating hope in the minds of people who were depressed, who had to toil hard to get their rights. The movement marked Gandhiji's first attempt of implementing his satyagraha, the mode of protest which was passive, non-violent, civil resistance to the masses against the British colonizers, who were the planters, who were we start with the Champaran movement, who were colonizing. I mean, the planters who were giving the advance to the cultivators, compelling them to cultivate the indigo. When the crop is ready, they were buying at a very low cost. The farmers felt it to be very, very exploitative. The plight of the farmers was very, very difficult. His next satyagraha, the early movements of Gandhiji, Kheda Satyagraha. At Kheda, 1918, the campaign took place in Kheda district of Gujarat, directed against the government. In 1918, the crops failed in the Kheda district, and due to low rains, the government refused to let go of the land revenue and insisted on its full collection of revenue. Helpless peasants looked at Gandhiji as their savior. This time, the Iron Man of India, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, came to live up his role. It is at this moment when he got the title Sardar, which means the leader. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, along with Gandhiji, has supported the movement, and This led them to withhold all the revenue payment till their demand for remission was fulfilled. By June 1919, government had to concede and listen to the satyagrahis and oblige to their demands. The next Ahmedabad Satyagraha, Gandhiji also led a similar movement in Ahmedabad, and this is one of the largest. It is called as the Manchester of India, where excellent cotton was produced. Ahmedabad was a hotbed of industry, and the rising prices combined with the lockouts and the loss of plague bonus, which was meant to the mill workers, they were deprived of it. And also unable to meet their cost of living, they asked for a share in the profit. Gandhiji organized satyagraha, giving voice to these people, helpless workers, and demanded for 35% increase in their wage, and used to distribute leaflets to encourage and educate the strikers to make them know the rights. The worker who did not get the rights, who had to toil hard. We studied in Russian Revolution the plight of the workers in the not only Russia but throughout the world, who created a sense for the rights of the workers, and that negotiation was done here by Gandhiji, who launched a personal hunger strike and brought the employers to negotiable table where he has negotiated, and he eventually made 35% increase, and that was achieved. Following his achievements in the initial stages of satyagrahas, the next important movement, the Rowlatt Satyagraha, it is called as a black act, a brutal act, a devilish act of the British. This act gave enormous powers to the British. It was hurriedly passed by the Imperial Legislative Council without even consulting anybody who is there in the Legislative Council. The act gave the government the power to imprison any person without any trial for a period of 2 years. The aim of this act was to destroy the national movement and imprison the national workers, where they were creating the sense of collective belongingness. Such a black act, such a black law was against the basic human rights of the people. This act, Rowlatt Act, emboldened with his success Gandhiji, several successes he has achieved. He has decided to launch a nationwide satyagraha against the proposed Rowlatt Act 1919. This act had been hurriedly passed by the Imperial Legislative Council. He was opposing to this. Many political activists joined him. Gandhiji was arrested. He was not allowed to come into Delhi. Many other important leaders, political leaders, were also arrested. So, a non-violent civil disobedience movement against such unjust, unlawful, black, brutal laws was launched by Gandhiji. This would start with a hartal or strike on April 6th. Rallies were organized everywhere in various cities. Workers went on strike in railway workshops, and shops also were closed down. Alarmed by the popular upsurge, and that scared the lines of communication such as railways and telegraph would be disrupted. The British administration decided to clamp down on the nationalists. Local leaders from different parts, Amritsar and Mahatma Gandhi, all of them were not allowed to come into Delhi. On 10th April, the police in Amritsar fired upon peaceful procession, provoking widespread attacks on banks, post office, railway stations. A martial law was imposed, and General O'Dwyer he has taken the command. We have studied The initial stage started from the World War I, and that led to the destruction of economy, the forced recruitment, increase in the prices, introduction of customs duty, introduction of income tax, failure of agricultural crops, failure to control the epidemic. These all hardships led the people to revolt with anger, and that was supported by this kind of devilish acts like the Rowlatt Act. This allowed the British to jail the protesters, put them in the jail. They cannot question. There is no trial. This was followed by a deadly massacre, destruction of lives of hundreds and thousands of people. It was the festival of Baisakhi at Amritsar, Jallianwala Bagh, the historical event where the cruel Britishers, General O'Dwyer and his officers, attacked the crowd who were peacefully gathering there to celebrate the festival of Baisakhi. The people, unaware of the curfew which is imposed, they gathered there. The same situation being attacked on peaceful protesters who protested against the arrest of Saifuddin Kichlu and Satyapal. These two people were involved in throwing the bomb at the British officer. So, General O'Dwyer gathered this park, Jallianwala Bagh. Bagh is a park. They surrounded the park, and General O'Dwyer asked the people to shoot. Innocent people were shot in the Jallianwala Bagh, unable to escape the huge well which is there inside. They jumped into the well, and that led to the greatest bloodshed in the history of India's freedom movement, where the British should not be forgiven for this torture. The sight can never be forgotten. Innocent people offering their lives for the cruelty of the British. It created terror in the minds of the people. The Khilafat movement, where the historic event of unity of Hindu Muslim as a mark of significance can be noticed here. The religious leader of the Muslims, Khalifa, was dethroned by the British. The Ottoman Sultan, we can call, he was dethroned by the British. The British wanted to take up the rule. Muslims everywhere protested and asked for their religious leader, Khalifa, or we call Caliph in English, to be put back to throne. Worldwide, there was a movement against the British. The word against in Hindi or Urdu is called as Khilaf, and the movement is called as Khilafat. The movement against the British policies, raising an agitation by the Indian Muslims, which was launched by two brothers, Ali brothers, Muhammad Ali and Shaukat Ali. These two people have launched the Khilafat movement to support them and to give the assistance of Hindus. Even Gandhiji joined this movement and created the awareness in the Congress. Congress initially was reluctant, they did not want to join, but later they joined. And for the very first time, Hindu Muslims they joined together in creating their awareness against the British policies, removal of the Muslim leader, the Caliph. These three issues led to the launch of the non cooperation movement, the redressal of the wrongs committed in the Punjab, It is called as the Punjab wrong, very big blunder which is created by the British, killing of innocent people at the Jallianwala Bagh. Number two is the Khilafat movement, that is the dethronement of the Muslim leader Khalifa, the to protect the Ottoman Empire. Accomplishment of Swaraj by Gandhiji. He is now determined to attain Swaraj. This Swaraj would be attained in stages. The non cooperation movement will be launched in stages. In the stage one, the titles would be surrendered by all the great political leaders and the personalities who were awarded and rewarded by the British. The knighthood surrendered by Rabindranath Tagore, Kaisar-e-Hind surrendered by Mahatma Gandhi. Many great leaders have surrendered their titles. They don't want the recognition of name when recognition is not there for the country. In the second stage, the boycott of civil services, army, police, court, legislative council, schools, foreign goods. In the third stage, the government used repression. A full civil disobedience campaign would be launched. If the government controlled these activities, a civil disobedience movement would be launched. And the non cooperation movement launched. Now, different people had different expectations from the non cooperation movement. Now, various social groups who have participated in the meet in this movement, they were having different aspirations. All of them responded to the call of Swaraj. Swa, self, Raj is rule. Self rule. We will not be in the rule of the British. We will have self rule. That's why the makers of the constitution made India a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Sovereign, supreme, independent power. Today, no country can come and attack India. We are self sufficient. At that time, we were not. There was disunity amongst the masses. So, all of them responded for the Swaraj. But the term meant different people understood the meaning of Swaraj in different ways. The movement in the towns, the movement started with middle class people participating in the cities. Thousands of students left government controlled schools, colleges, headmasters, teachers, they resigned their post. Lawyers gave up their legal practices. The council elections were boycotted in most of the provinces. Everybody boycotted except the Madras Legislative Council. They want to participate in the Justice Party, where the Justice Party, the party of the non Brahmins, felt that entering into the Legislative Council was only one way to get power. If they participate in the elections, they'll be powerful. If they don't participate, they will not. Rest everybody boycotted their work. The effect of the non cooperation movement on the economic front was more dramatic. The foreign goods were boycotted, liquor shops were picketed, and the foreign cloth was burnt in huge bonfires. The import of foreign cloth halved from 1921 and 1922, its value dropping from 102 crores to rupees 57 crores. In many places, merchants and traders refuse to trade in foreign goods or finance the foreign trade. As the boycott movement spread, boycott is simply refuse the foreign goods. The people began discarding the imported clothes and wearing only Indian ones. Production of Indian textile mills and handlooms went up, but this could not take the challenge which the machine made goods have brought in. The movement could not last very long. This movement in the cities gradually slowed down for a variety of reasons. Khadi was costly, people could not buy. Mass production in the could not happen, and the poor people cannot afford to buy. How could this boycott of the cloth continue for long then? So the British took advantage and started flooding the machine made goods, where the industrialists faced a bigger challenge. Then they came up with the organization, the Chambers of Commerce and the Federation of Commerce. Thakur Das, Purushottam Das, J.D. Birla, all of them, they have been pioneers in the industrial sector. They wanted rules and regulations to safeguard their industries. They didn't want the customs duty being imposed on them. So, the British, who was exploiting the industrialists, the agriculturists, all sections of the people, they had to face the challenge because the lawmakers were the British. If we were in the lawmaking, the legislative, we could handle. And the plight of the students who left the school, the teachers who left the job, the government headmasters, the lawyers, everybody could not stay for long. They had to find alternative source of employment, which was very difficult. They had to go back and join their services. The Gudem Rebellion, Alluri Sitaramaraju, the man who was very, very gifted, who was called as the incarnation of God. He had some special powers, who could make astrological predictions. He could hypnotize the people. He could heal the people. He could survive the bullet shots. He captivated the British in a very daring and valiant way. He could create that sense of nationalism. He was a follower of Gandhiji, but not in a non-violent way, but his to achieve his ideology, to face the British, to question them, to ask them that the motherland is gifted by God to them, and no foreigner can take the motherland from him. And the rebellion, he questioned that each bullet you shoot, every drop of blood which is falling on the ground, will create many such Alluri Sitaramarajus who will be willing to sacrifice the nation and challenge the white dogs who have come to loot the nation. He persuaded people to wear khadi. He even persuaded them to give up the drinking. He was responsible to create awareness for prohibition. Another great personality who has come from Fiji, an indentured labor, Baba Ramchandra. He was a sannyasi. He himself worked as an indentured labor. He knows the plight of the people who work, who toil hard, who are exploited. The movement here was against the talukdars and the landlords who demanded from peasants exorbitantly high rents and variety of other taxes or cesses. The peasants had to do begari, that is the forced labor, and work with the landlords without any payment. As tenants, they had no security of tenure, being regularly evicted. The poor landlords, they had to pay rent. The poor farmers, they had to pay the rent. And the rich landlords, they wanted the revenue to be exempted. So this was the plight of the peasants. The peasants, they demanded that the revenue collection be abolished, and the begari or the forced labor has to be condemned, totally boycotted, and then there should be a an answer given to the oppressive landlords who have been in the exploitative measures in many places. To support this movement, which was launched by Baba Ramchandra and Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, they organized this Kisan Sabha at Awadh. Many barbers and washermen, Nai Dobi, they also have supported the system. If they stop supporting the other exploitators who are exploiting the innocent peasants, then they will realize the importance of the people and will not exploit. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru giving his support in to Baba Ramchandra in creating awareness in the minds of the people. Swaraj in the plantations. So, when Gandhiji attained so many achievements throughout the country, the plantation workers they had to sign an agreement 1859, the Inland Immigration Act, which did not allow the people to go out of the plantation. They had no freedom. Their freedom was curtailed. When they heard about Gandhiji's achievements, they believed that Gandhiji is going to come save them. They understood the idea of Swaraj as right to move freely in and out of the confined place for which they were in which they were enclosed. This meant that retaining the link with villages, they wanted to go back to their villages. They thought that the land will be redistributed to them and they can cultivate in their own land. Then they left the plantation and started moving towards the villages, where they were arrested at the check posts, at the police stations and all. They were beaten, they were flogged, they were made to rub their nose on the ground, they were made to salute and beg for mercy from the British officials. Gandhiji non cooperation movement, he decided to withdraw. This movement, which created sensation in the minds of the people, different masses expecting different expectations from Gandhiji, their own understanding of the movement. A peaceful protest of the peasants, which was going through the Chauri Chaura at Gorakhpur, Uttar Pradesh. These protesters were attacked by the policemen at the police station at Gorakhpur. The peaceful protesters attacked the police station, set ablaze the police station, killed 22 policemen, enraged because they were innocent. When they were attacked by the police, the mass struggle became a mob, and they have adopted for uh, attack to defend themselves. They have adopted this policy. Gandhiji felt that people did not understand the meaning of satyagraha. Satyagraha, as the word means, the satya is truth, graha is adherence or following, and in the later stage, satyameva jayate, which means only truth alone triumphs. Adherence to the path of truth was the meaning which Gandhiji wanted to explain, but people did not understand his satyagraha. A non violent, peaceful struggle has launched into a destructive element. That's how Gandhiji wanted to recall, he wanted to call back his movement of non cooperation. The Chauri Chora incident occurred at Chauri Chora in the Gorakhpur district of the United Province in British India on 5th February 1922, when a large group of protesters participating in the non cooperation movement were clashed with the police. The police who attacked them, they to defend, they had to enraged with anger. These protesters attacked the police and set ablaze the police station. The map of India showing Chauri Chora police station. This triangular red mark is responsible for the launch of the non cooperation movement and also withdrawal of the non cooperation movement. So, that is part 1 of the making of the nationalist movement in India. I hope it is clear. My dear children, any queries, please text me. Please give your valuable comments. Thank you so much. On this day, when India is celebrating 75 years of successful independence, 75 years of successful independence, I make my smallest contribution to you people to simplify the concept of